I have a section on state of international development.
I think you should say it.
Terry, you see, Terry, actually, there were 3 names of this talk, so there are 3 talks. Terry first asked me to talk on international development. And then Dick had a paper said, this was called the State of the World talk. And then on the agenda last night it said, context of our engagement. So I thought, oh, I get to make 3 talks.
Go for it, Rob.
Okay, I'm almost finished. So,
I thought
remember,
you said the whole world was almost finished.
it's almost over, Jim. But when it's quite nothing, completely damped out, then I was a tiger bursting into sunlight. That's when it happens, right, David? And I bow to my master teacher. I'm so fortunate I've had such brilliant master teachers throughout my life. I'm so grateful. You know, you and Joe and the other Joes and and Jean Houston and Geluk Rinpoche, my Tibetan Lama, and I've had so many wonderful teachers. How can I be so blessed? You know, and you, I know you have too. When we were in Bilbao, Spain, remember Joep van Arendonk of the UN Fund for Population Activity said there were 2 questions that we should ask around the world when we help bring water to a village. Remember that? In Bilbao, Spain, at our global meeting? He said 2 questions. What are the 2 questions? Number 1, what is humanness? What does it mean to be a human being? We've got to ask people that. People assume they know. They assume it means to be... We assume we know. Progress. Consumption and production. Fossil fuel energy. But what is development? What is a human being? What is human development? We need to ask these questions of everyone we meet and create dialogues. Remember, you challenged us in Spain to have dialogues all over the world on these 2 questions. Well, I've been doing it. Have you? I've been everywhere I go. I ask these 2 questions. In my course at NYU, I ask my students. I start my course with these 2 questions. What does it mean to be a human being? What does it mean to develop human beings? These are fundamental. We assume we know. We don't know. We have to rethink, think newly. Now, what is international development anyway? Human beings have been around, as we know, 2 million, 200,000, 50,000. Hominids, 2 million. Homo sapiens, 200,000. Homo sapiens, 50,000. More or less, rough years. We've been developing all these years. Was that international development? Well, yes. I mean, it was human development around planet Earth. So international development as a profession, though, is very new, isn't it? Probably since World War II. But a lot of things are new. Economics is a new profession. Psychology is a new science. Economics is as we understand it, is a new construct. But international development is about as old as some of us are, I would say, as a profession. So it began as economic development. Everybody thought development, you go into a poor country and you change the macroeconomic framework, right? The World Bank kind of thing, IMF kind of thing. You get the macroeconomics right and everything wealth will trickle down. Did not work, right? Trickle-down theory does not work. You change the macroeconomic context, the rich get richer, as we see in this country and all over the world. And then development evolved from purely economic development to socio-economic development. We brought in the social dimension of health and education along with the economic dimension. And then we brought in the political and cultural dimension, socio-political, cultural, economic, and then environmental development. And then the UN in 1990 created something called human development. And that's when I joined. Because when I picked up the UNDP's Human Development Report, I said, I know something about human development. That's what we called our work, right? So I said, well, why don't I help the UN figure out what it means by human development? Because we've been working on human development for 20 years. So human development is holistic development. You have entry points, but then you touch everything. Say if you enter through a preschool project, you're also doing economic development, political development, cultural development, not just social or educational development. And now I think we're moving into integral development. And I have found it very helpful to use Wilber's quadrants because development theorists and practitioners tend to focus on the lower right quadrant, the collective exterior, changing policies, institutions. Pardon?
The quadrants.
The quadrants. We have and you have various constructs like that. So most of development happens in this quadrant. People are trying to change the external collective factor. And often we forget we have to change individual mindsets, consciousness, awareness, value systems. We have to change individual behavior of leaders. In my course, this is where I teach how a leader behaves this way. A leader behaves in a facilitative manner is one way. Culturally, how do we change our myths, our symbol systems, our rituals, so that people have a new common sense that all human beings should have care and services, and then new forms of that, new systems, policies, institutions, organizations that bring all of that into form. So that's what I used in the UN, and people were amazed. They had not thought about these other three dimensions. Now you and I have, we know the importance of changing mindsets and behavior and culture. But, how do we use, I think to me that is one of the edges of development. So moving beyond the myth of development, that development is always onward and upward, more progress, more consumption, more... There's something called the Gross Happiness Index. Have you heard of the Gross Happiness Index? The Kingdom of Bhutan invented this. That we shouldn't measure development through the gross development product, but through gross happiness. Now, what is happiness? And what you find interesting is happiness is not monolithic. Happiness in Bali is different a bit, maybe from happiness in Chicago, which may be different from happiness in Kathmandu, or happiness in Toronto. So, because in the Human Development Index of the UN, everything is on a mono-track. Longevity, education, literacy, education, these are mono, and they're not bad. At least the Human Development Index is beyond the gross national product. So we move beyond the purely economic index for measuring development to bringing in social factors and education and so on. So I just